Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Nebraska Football Now. I'm your host, Andy Classen, joined once again by our Husker Insider, Jake Bartecki. Jake, how are we doing?
Hey, we're in off a win. I don't think we were last time we did this little show here, so it's great to be back in the winning column and hope for another one this weekend.
You know, excellent point. It took a while, but Nebraska won by 18 points. It was on the road, Big Ten opponent. There's actually a lot of positives, a lot of good takeaways from this last game.
Yeah, there were a lot of takeaways, I think good and bad. I mean, there was a sluggish start for Nebraska, and that's been a problem, right? I mean, there's been question about how this team kind of starts football games, but it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Matt Rhule said that since he set foot here in Lincoln. And I think it's interesting, you know, they started out slow, but the offense moved the ball. They put themselves in position, had some missed field goals. The defense really, I thought, for the entire game from beginning to end, was pedal to the metal. They brought a blitz. They had a good pass rush. You and I talked about that last week, and it paid off.
Yeah, defense had some really good bright spots throughout that Purdue game. Let's step away here and hear from Ben Scott, Nebraska's center, and maybe some things that they need to tweak on offense.
Just making sure we fix all the little mistakes here and there, and I think just taking accountability on what's going on and how we can fix it person by person. You know, it's we don't want to play the blame game and all that. We just want to take accountability and focus on how to fix that problem and what's next.
Okay, Jake, you heard it right there from the man himself. He starts every play holding the football. What do you make of that where he's saying we need to clean a few things up? And we're not looking at pointing fingers, but he's kind of pointing fingers right there saying we're making mistakes on the offensive line.
Yeah, Nebraska's one of the worst teams in the country when it comes to penalties. They're not the worst. They're not towards the bottom, but they're definitely on the wrong side of where you want to be. And some of that has been on the offensive line, false starts and, you know, problems with snaps, so it's not always just flags, but I think that's kind of what he's getting at there. And Matt Rhule talked about it. I mean, we got to think about grown man football is what he was saying in his media availability on Monday, and I think what he means by that, he went on to say, you know, guys will say, I thought I heard a whistle or I thought I heard the quarterback clap. He goes, those are just excuses. I mean, this is not what our standard is at championship football. You can't be blaming stuff like that.
Right, and we'll get into it a little later, but Matt Rhule does make the distinction between, you know, a team that wins games and a team that wins championships and, you know, the progression that happens there. You alluded to it a little bit there, the defense. We talked about how they need to bounce back type of a game. When they were at their best last season, they were very aggressive, a lot of blitzes, really getting after the quarterback. It felt like they got away from that in the Illinois game, in the Northern Iowa game even. But, man, did they get back into it on the road in West Lafayette.
Yeah, this is much more of what we've seen from Tony White's group. I mean, lots of pressure up front, some with 3 down linemen, sometimes 4. And when they had a 4th in there, MJ Sherman got to the quarterback and brought down Hudson Card. I'm really high on MJ Sherman. I think he's a really talented player that Nebraska has. And then John Bullock, I mean, again, was outstanding. He had the pick 6, but he also had a slew of tackles. He's leading the team just shy of 30 tackles on the season. And I was really impressed also with the secondary again. I mean, Tommy Hill did not play. Sierra Wright was awesome again. He locked down Purdue's receivers. It'll be a good test this weekend because Nebraska is going to face a team in Rutgers that loves to run the football. And if there's one thing Nebraska has struggled with, it's been stopping the run and preventing 15, 16-play drives.
I think that's been a very pleasant surprise to Husker Nation abroad. Just the depth that we've been able to find in the defensive backfield. You mentioned Sierra Wright filling in for Tommy Hill. And Tommy Hill's coming back. It sounds like an injury that he's working his way out of it. Suited up, was on the sideline at the Purdue game, just didn't feel quite right. So I think he's going to be back sooner than later.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the things that we need to work on as a football team. There's no dancing around it. It's the elephant in the room, special teams.
Yeah.
And let's take a quick minute to hear from the head man himself, Coach Rhule, and really what he saw this past Saturday.
To me, wasn't the field goal protection team. It was the snapper. And I mean this sincerely. Like, we know what to do, and we have the guys who can do it. They got to go do it. You know, like that's the phase that we're in. Like, if you guys have heard me talk about, like, winning football to championship football, like, you can't be a different guy in practice than you are in the games.
Okay, so there it was. You know, he's saying, we got the guys that can do it. Now they need to do it. Sounds pretty easy, but obviously it isn't. We're halfway through the season, and I know the last time I saw them line up for a 39-yarder, 40-yard field goal, I had very little confidence, and guess what? it got blocked again.
Right, they went 0 for 3. And again, Tristan Alvano is very, very week to week, as I like to put it, because he's recovering from that groin surgery. And a groin injury is a big deal for a kicker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your primary muscle when you're putting the ball through the uprights. Now, John Hull, interesting situation. Came from Iowa Western, kicked at Lincoln Southwest, local guy. But what Coach also said there is he didn't necessarily think it was the kicker as much as it was the snaps. And he said that that's clean in practice. Now, Brett Maher, as we heard last week, has been working with this kicking group as a whole. But again, Matt Rule doesn't think that's the problem. But you got to figure things out. You can't make a kick when the snap rolls into the hands of the holder. Yeah. And there's other things on special teams as well. I thought Brian Bashini's punting was great. I think he's really got a good leg this year. But their kick return and punt return coverage has been poor. They're getting beat on the edge. So it's definitely something that needs to get cleaned up.
Yeah, those two units, if you look at like consensus rankings on different websites and whatnot, you're looking at a bottom 125, 120 type of special teams unit. And it's just not, it can't happen if you want to win close games. Yeah. And they spent this whole offseason talking about chasing three. Well, we're not there yet if this is what's happening. Well, let's turn it around a little bit and talk about some positives. We are at midseason here. Yeah. There have been some standouts. Let's start with the offensive unit. Who's surprised you or really impressed you thus far?
Well, the obvious choice is Dylan Raiola, right? I mean, your freshman quarterback leads all D1 freshmen in passing yards. He's thrown 2 interceptions that really weren't his fault. I mean, we're talking jump balls that got ripped away from a receiver as they went to the ground. Otherwise, he's been outstanding. He's run the ball well. He's made smart decisions. He's been outstanding. That's an obvious pick. So the two guys I've been really impressed with offensively. The first one, I'll go to the run game here, Dante Dowdell. I mean, again, wasn't really impressed with him in the spring game, but he hurt himself in the spring game. Now he comes out and he's your lead back along with Ramir Johnson, and he can run guys over. We haven't seen him break one yet. We really haven't seen anybody from Nebraska break off a long run. But in terms of being able to get consistently 3, 4, or 5 yards, Dowdell has done that. The other one is Ja'Cory Barney Jr., and Dylan Raiola talked about this. It's really important that guys like Barney and Raiola and Carter Nelson are all in that same freshman class together. Barney's been so fast. He shoots out of a cannon when he catches a pass. He's able to catch the ball in stride. I've really liked him to this point in the year.
And I really like how they've involved him in the running game. It just kind of goes back to getting your playmakers the ball any which way possible. You talk about breaking off big runs. I think Barney might have the biggest run this season. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Defensively, I'm going to try and be a fortune teller here. You got to bring up Bullock, right?
Absolutely. And linebacker was a question mark for Nebraska. I mean, they lost a lot of experienced guys over the past couple of years, from Garrett Nelson and Henrich and guys like that. John Bullock stepped up. I mean, John Bullock, when this staff took over, was a backup safety. And Matt Rule made the decision to move him to linebacker. He kind of had to change his body, and now he's looking like an all-conference player. 29 tackles on the season, 2.5 sacks, and a pick 6 against Purdue. He's been outstanding. The other guy I really like defensively, Sierra Wright. I don't think we expected him to see as much time as he has, and we talked about it with Tommy Hill having that plantar fascia issue. It's opened the door for Wright to come in and play corner. He's not allowed many big plays. He's even gotten to the quarterback, and he makes really good, quick tackles.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to just the defensive unit as a whole. The defensive linemen that we talked about a lot during the offseason, they're doing their job, and that's opening up lanes for the linebackers and young guys in the defensive back area to make plays as well. So it's kind of coming together for that defense. Love those 2 picks. Yep. Well, let's get to the matter at hands here. Rutgers looking really good, 4-0 right now. Greg Schiano's back at the helm. It worked the first time he was there. It's starting to work again the second time. And wouldn't you know it, they're leaning on a very powerful rushing game.
It's like the Matrix, you know, it's like nothing ever kind of hits him. Like he's running, and like he's just got such elite body balance and contact balance, but also like he sees it coming, and so no one ever gets like a true shot on him, right? It's always like a glancing blow. I think he's really, really, really. So that's the type of offense people have been playing against us. That bleeding, like, hey, we're gonna get 3, 4, 5 yards, just stay on the field, try to wear you down. So that's be a heck of a challenge for us. And then he brings in the element, though, Mitch, of they had him backed up against Washington, and then 3 guys hit him, and you can run for he can run for 60.
Yeah, Kyle Monungai, 5'9", 210. averaging 6.1 yards per carry. So Nebraska only allowed 1.6 yards per attempt against Purdue. Flip those two numbers around. That's what they're going to get with Rutgers this season with Monungai. Man, Matt Rule described him like the Matrix. You know, he's getting hit, and he just is able to avoid everything. He refuses to go down. He's shifty. This is a team in Rutgers that I think, you know, they've been hard-nosed, run the football right at you. This guy can kick it out to the edge and make plays in open space as well.
He's a back who's going to bring it to you. So, I mean, you know, he uses dominant contact. So if we use it, it's going to be a lot of clacking going on.
Contact balance, vision. I mean, the guy, he just does not stop his feet. And the really neat thing about him is you see him and he gets his yak yards are ridiculous. I mean, he's getting hit at 2 and 3 yards, and then when they spot the ball, you know, he's gained 6 and 7.
Reminds me of like Marshall Faulk. They always talked about like a guy like Marshall.
Great comparison.
Yeah, you never really get a full hit on him. He's able to bounce off and break a lot of those tackles.
Yep.
And then he's not hurt in the fourth quarter either because you're not squaring him up and laying a really good lick on him. We also get to see a familiar face at quarterback, a young man that we saw from Minnesota last year. Does that give the advantage? This is kind of a talking point. Does that give the advantage to Nebraska or Rutgers, the experience factor there?
I don't really know if it goes either way because you look at the game last year, and that was in week 1. So you had a lot of things that change from season to season. I mean, it's been a while since Nebraska's seen him, and it's a completely different scheme. I'd say, honestly, if I had to think, the advantage goes to Rutgers there because this is a different playbook that Kaliak-Manis is working with from Rutgers to Minnesota. Now, the playbook hasn't really changed, and the scheme really hasn't changed defensively for Nebraska, so I think he probably has a good sense of what to expect. I don't really know if it matters, though, because it was so long ago. I mean, it doesn't feel like it, but it was week 1 of last season on Thursday night. But, yeah, it's a tough situation to decide, but I'd say, I mean, knowing that Kaliak-Manis is not on the same team he was last year, it probably goes to him.
I think it goes back to the defense just needs to perform, do what they do well, kind of like last week.
Yep.
You know, be the aggressor, take the fight to the offense. What's going to be a key for you offensively? What are we going to have to see from the Huskers offensive unit to pull off this victory?
Well, Nebraska over the last 2 weeks has 10 plays of 20 yards or more. I think those are going to be tough to come by, but I think you're going to have to figure out a way to get a couple of big plays because you already know Rutgers is going to take as much time as they can off the clock, keep Raiola off the sideline. But also, that's just their mentality. That's just their game plan is they're going to run the football. So I think you got to figure out a way to hit a few big plays. And I think Nebraska can do it. Dylan Raiola's shown he can get the ball out of his hands quickly. Find a Thomas Fidone over the middle for 25 yards. Find, you know, Isaiah Nayor down the sidelines or Jamal Banks down the sidelines. They've got a lot of options to do that. I think you're going to need to see some big plays.
Hey, well, let's put it out there then. What's your prediction, Jake?
I will go 21-17 Nebraska. I think it's a low-scoring game. Okay. I think it's one that Nebraska probably will control most of, but I think Rutgers is also going to try to dominate time of possession, so I think it's going to be close to the very end.
You know,
what about you, Andy?
Well, a lot of folks are saying that it's going to be a low-scoring game, and there's a lot of reason for that. Nebraska's got a great defense. We really do. We're seeing some good things there. And Rutgers likes to bleed time. They run the ball so well. And the point spread opened up at 6.5. It opened up at 6.5, shot up real quick to 7, 7.5. So now you're looking at a 2-score type of game. I think the Huskers cover. And I think if Rutgers needs a chance to win, they're going to have to go for it. They're going to have to kind of show themselves a little bit defensively. That's going to open up some of these big play opportunities.
There you go.
I like Nebraska pulling this one off in a big way at home. 31-21, go Big Red.
So 31-21, 21-17. All right, 2 different ends of the spectrum.
Well, I got to thank you, Jake, once again for stopping by and sharing all that wonderful information with us. And I want to thank you for tuning in to another edition of Nebraska Football Now.